Welcome to the ASUGS Best Practices for SAP S4HANA Virtual Experience. My name is Adam Anderson, and I will be our moderator for today's panelist discussion. Today's discussion is going to be on the key considerations for successful SAP S4HANA adoption. And we have several panelists with us today, and they will be introducing themselves. Dan, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Sure thing, Adam. Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Berkwin. I'm the VP of Global IT for Generac Power Systems. Generac is a large global manufacturer of engine-driven backup power solutions for residential, commercial, and industrial applications, engine and battery-driven chore products, and a leader in the energy management space. So Generac is a large SAP customer, but still relatively new in our life cycle with SAP, having just moved to ECC in the 2015 to 2016 timeframe. In addition to ERP, we're heavy Ariba and SAP Commerce customers with a significant movement in revitalizing our digital and consumer digital experience. So we're in the investigation phase of S4, investigating from what will this do for our business in terms of game-changing functionality and to investigating on how to make it happen from cloud to on-prem and partner selection. So really great to be here, and thanks again, Adam.
Thanks, Daniel. Helen, why don't we kick it over to you?
Yep, good morning, Helen Frericks. I'm the Senior Director of Global Enterprise Systems at Entegris, Inc. I've actually been involved in manufacturing SAP companies for about 30 years now. Entegris is a provider of material handling solutions for the semiconductor industry. They've been using SAP there since 1999 and has a solid base of the ECC clients, along with most of the cloud offerings from SuccessFactors to IBP to Ariba to BPC, Hybris, you name it, we're very SAP-centric. As we look at the coming years, we look at Entegris has been growing dramatically over the last few years. We've been very busy. And we look at how do we move to S4 and find the right reasons to do so, given that our factories are full, our capacity is at limits, and how do we actually make that decision to go forward? So glad to be here to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. We also have Bert Schulze with us from SAP over in Waldorf, Germany. Bert?
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. My name is Bert Schulze. I'm a VP at SAP, part of our product management and engineering group around S4HANA. I'm doing that since day one of S4. I'm overseeing all customer adoption groups in S4HANA Cloud as well as S4HANA on-premise, and have a group of experts around the globe which are sitting more or less on the lap of our customers, trying to advise them on doing S4HANA implementations in the best possible way. We use that as a roll-in and roll-out mechanism to make sure that we can share also our knowledge globally with all our customers in the best possible way.
Thanks, Bert. Paru, why don't you give an introduction on yourself as well?
Thank you, Adam. So I'm Parvati Shankar, better known as Paru Shankar. I head Mindset in the Asia Pacific region out of Bangalore, and I also head the product strategy for Mindset globally. I have about 2 decades of experience in SAP as well as a customer of SAP. And my last experience in SAP was in S4HANA product management team together with Bert, leading several strategic projects like co-innovation roadmaps across all versions of SAP S4HANA before I joined Mindset.
Thanks, Paru. My name is Adam Anderson. I'm the head of the SAP consulting practice here at Mindset here in North America. I work with Paru extensively. My background happens to be split pretty much equally between industry expertise as well as in the consulting realm. And I'm glad to and happy to be moderating today's discussion. As we kick off today, Helen and Dan, you're not dissimilar from a lot of other customers that are out there. We know that approximately 22% of the SAP ECC customer base has been moving in the adoption space as of now and have adopted S4. but that also means that there's a very large percentage that are in your shoes and looking to what's the journey look like. What we wanted to do is have you be the voice for those silent majority at the present, and ask some questions to Bert, and Paru and I will chime in as needed to offer some color and commentary as well. But Helen, why don't you kick us off with some thoughts that you have specifically and questions that you might have that Bert and Paru and I can shed some additional light on.
Okay, yes, great, thank you. So as I mentioned, Entegris has been using SAP since 1999. They were relatively early adopters here in Minnesota to bring SAP in. And over that time, have invested very heavily in maintaining a single instance of SAP, of utilizing as many SAP tools as we can as an SAP-centric system. But we've also spent a lot of time working on process rationalization and automation and process improvements, and really trying to design our organization to be as efficient as possible. So having done all those things, when we start to look at a business case for S4, a lot of those same things keep coming back to us, but we've already achieved a lot of those. So because our factories are so busy, because our organization is doing extremely well, I have to come up with a really solid business case for why S4 would be the right answer for Entegris and why now. And that's where I struggle. I struggle to build that business case. So I'm really curious to see what is the biggest driver towards moving to S4 for companies like us that have been on SAP for a long time.
Thanks for the question. So happy to give it a first shot, and then of course Adam and Paru, if you have some additional thoughts on it. So first, I think if we look into our install base today of S4, we can see that roughly 2/3 of the customers are net new customers and 1/3 of customers came from a conversion. This is also simply due to the fact that that S4 is state of the art since 2015. So if a new customer comes to us, they of course directly go to S4 without any kind of conversion. If we look into the installed base customers, which represent, as said, 1/3 of the customers in S4, we see that we have halfway of the customers doing a greenfield implementation and halfway of the customers doing conversion from the existing system into the S4 world. So why do they go that way? If I consider that the world outside has significantly changed since we introduced R3 and significantly also since we introduced S4 as a solution to the market. We've seen that, for example, the simple volume of lots of our customers have increased significantly. I'll make you a simple example. In a product-driven world, we've seen that one invoice typically represents $1 million US. If you look into the subscription economy, it's 1 million invoices with $1 each. So the same size, but a significant higher volume, which needs to be processed through the systems. And these kind of changes, which we do see, and by the way, also all subsequent tasks like accounts receivable, accounts payable, dunning runs, whatever needs to be done subsequently needs to stay completely integral from a processing perspective and also from a data perspective. We see same behavior of systems also, for example, in logistics lots. So the average value of a logistic lot has been decreased over time, while we see simply that the volume of lots have been completely exploded. And this is something where we also see that in combination with automation, we want to ensure that customers consider normal standard tasks as something which could be run from the system completely automated. And that we keep the resources of the people sitting in front of the system really on exceptions. This is what we call this exception-based handling. And what we've seen that most of the business cases customers have created are really centering around their thinking, where do I need to be in the next 3 to 5 years, and where do I need to focus on with changing my business at the end of the day? How much is the change which is coming from outside affecting my overall setup as an organization, as a company? And around these topics, we see a lot of companies building their business cases. If you consider that you also have today, as you rightfully said, a lot of automation, I would argue that typically We did that as well at SAP, by the way. So we're sitting in the same boat, or were sitting in the same boat when we were about to move from ECC into S4. We have created a lot of automation, but they were all hard-coded, because we drove that based on algorithm, based on structure into an automation, which prevented us from also adopting innovation. Because in the moment you want to adopt something, you need to go into very costly restructuring of your automation. And this is where you do see, for example, with the adoption of AI, of ML, so machine learning or artificial intelligence in general, that we do see that all of these models become much more flexible, and we can see that the system is also a self-learning system in that overall setup if we move from the old world where we come from into the new world. And most of the customers' business cases are centered around exactly this understanding and learning. What we have done, and then I'm going to pause, but what we have done, that we also created all the use cases and business cases which we've seen from customers in our Value Advisor tool. So there's one dedicated URL with a Value Advisor tool where you can find almost for all industries today, basic understanding of where would we consider you can improve KPIs on best practice based on what customers has achieved when they moved from the ECC world into the S4 world.
Great. Thanks, Bert. Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit over to Dan. And Dan, you had some questions surrounding an approach, as well as something along the lines of, hey, listen, how does deployment really come into play, and how do we make that deployment decision?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I guess one of the things top of mind for our team is what sort of decision process can SAP help us with when it comes to those deployment options, whether it's public cloud, private cloud, on-prem. And we're in an environment where all three are acceptable, and we know that there's a financial portion to that decision. But beyond the financial portion of that decision, what sort of process can SAP help with in terms of helping with those deployment options? And or what are you seeing the market doing? Is there a major?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think maybe starting backwards with the question. What we do see from a trend perspective is that depending on the size of the company and also, let's say, the industry specifics, we do see that customers either decide more for a public cloud model if they are really in a complete standard model, or if they are very industry specific, we do see that there's a tendency more towards on-prem or private cloud option, because the private cloud option typically keeps you more flexibility, or gives you more flexibility in the way how you're going to implement in that overall setup. The interesting element is that if you look from a mindset perspective, public cloud means a fit to standard. And this is, by the way, also what we typically recommend as a good starting point into that kind of conversation, to run a fit standard workshop, because pure public cloud means I go more for standard than I typically would do if I go for an on-prem system. I can't take all my custom code with me. So it's the next question, how much of your custom code do you rely on today? Is it sufficient from the functional coverage, what you do see in a public cloud model today? Of course, including extensibility, but without considering that you move your entire existing custom code into that new world. If you consider for yourself, hey, I have changed a lot in the last couple of years, I now need to focus on just taking what I have and bring that onto the next level, then, for example, you can do also today technically a direct conversion from your existing ECC system, including all your custom code, into a private cloud option, which is a direct conversion option into a cloud model. So at the end of the day, it depends a bit on where you are, how much you're really keen and able to adopt standard, how much you follow also what the industry currently calls a back to standard approach, and then we take it typically from there in a more detailed conversation.
Hey, Paru, any additional thoughts on this particular topic?
Yeah, I think if you also look into the RISE announcements at the moment, it brings together a whole lot of framework that SAP had already provided, even to identify what might be the business case, business value that you want to put in place as you consider the move. So let me just rewind a little bit what already existed, right? Bert mentioned the value repository, but that being said, even at a very high level, you can already start looking into the business transformation navigator to see exactly which is the industry you're operating in and what are the different solution capabilities. Move from there even to look into where exactly are you using your current SAP ECC solution with the business scenario recommendations. So there are a few tools that are already available, perhaps not very well known in the whole industry, that could be utilized just to look into how big is your journey into S/4HANA. The biggest part that I would like to proponent is the whole business value aspect of it, right? So if you look into your whole balance sheet, you can even see there are areas where SAP has made tremendous move. Finance is one area where bringing together all the ledgers, there have been tremendous move on a technology perspective that then led to a lot of business related, process related changes that you can bring in, as Bert said, with as less custom implementation. And that custom implementation effort, you can really focus on building your differentiation in that industry. So there are these certain kind of aspects, differentiation, value that you can look into from a business perspective, even before you think about the technical journey, right? So.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Helen, any other questions that you would have on this?
Oh, I would have a lot of questions on this. I guess listening to that, it is always the case that finance is the area that is brought up as being the area where there's all these optimizations. Now, yeah, I come from a manufacturing background. We're a manufacturing company. We have discrete, repetitive, process manufacturing. We make chemicals, we make plastic valves, we make a whole bunch of different products. So finance isn't going to be the one that drives us to adopt S4. It's going to be because it comes from the manufacturing perspective and all of the different tools. So on that note, really, we do have all of these different applications, be they SAP, things like Ariba, SuccessFactors, IBP, Concur, Hybris. But we also we want to be able to move into the MES space, connected factory, digitization. And the single approach really to the integration aspects of SAP S4. I mean, what are the proposed kind of moving forward? How do we get to an area where we don't have all of these different integration products to have to use to be able to bring SAP together with all of these different areas?
Yeah,
is there a roadmap from SAP to standardize?
Yeah, let me tee that one up, and I would love Bert and Paru, your thoughts on this as well, right? So obviously with the public cloud, you have standard APIs that you need to be integrating on the public cloud for S4, right? So you have SAP Cloud Platform. We now have the Business Transformation Platform, and there are a host of other third-party integration tool sets that are out there. This is one that I think vast majority of customers ask me on a day-to-day basis, hey, listen, what's the path forward on integration? What's the proper tool set, and how do we know we're investing in the right tool?
Absolutely. I mean, these are questions which we get in almost all of the projects, and I think this is also a bit independent even of S4 as such, because we do see that the entire world has also changed significantly from what we knew 20 years ago as a more monolithical approach towards something where we do see a lot of adoption in best practices across different states. And I do see that, especially Helen, as you mentioned, that you have a couple of also cloud products running, that you have an on-prem installation today, which is an ECC-centered solution. The clear recommendation from SAP is that even for solutions which could, from a technical perspective, because they run on premise, you could potentially leverage also proprietary interfaces. There is a clear recommendation to what Adam just said, to go for public available APIs, because we can ensure that with a public API, it runs also over an upgrade without any interference and disruption. But what is for us important, that we invested in the last 12 to 18 months significantly in also aligning significantly beyond an API structure. To give you a simple example, we also did move a couple of applications on the cloud platform. MDG, for example, master data governance, to make sure that you have central elements which typically do not belong to one dedicated application or technology stack, also on a generic approach to ensure that you can also orchestrate that across your entire landscape going forward. And this goes hand in hand with, for example, investments into what we call a domain model alignment, because different than if you just have a proprietary or very generic integration between two systems. We, for example, want to make sure that if you have today a cost center in Ariba, it is exactly the same definition, same language, same length of a data field as we have it in the rest of our environment. And this domain model alignment, which goes now across almost all our applications, gives SAP customers also a significant advantage back of what we were always standing for, to have a real end-to-end business process integration. And if you consider that what we are currently doing, I don't know if you've seen the rollout of our strategy recently, but with our business process intelligence, which we currently put on top of our technology layers, we anyway see that the world is going more or less independent of software stacks, which we're going to deliver, which means we think also end-to-end. I think with my team today much more in a procure-to-pay process, or in a hire-to-retire process, which spans instantly across multiple technical stacks. And what we're doing is to bring exactly these intelligent business processes on the next level to run there, also fuel it with the intelligent processes and make sure that we have that seamless connection towards the back end, independent of the technical stake, which, by the way, also gives us an opportunity if you consider that you move custom code elements, which you might have in an ECC environment today around manufacturing, as you mentioned before. You can put that on the cloud platform, which makes it agnostic towards the backend integration, because it does not necessarily have to be updated with each release cycle, and it does not need to necessarily be connected to one single instance, because you get the freedom to also connect that to multiple backbone systems. That's how we see how the clear trend is going forward. And last element, Helen, because you just mentioned finance is, of course, heart and center for every ERP installation, but it does not stop there. But I can't really see a customer implementing ERP without finance. This is why, of course, finance is almost omnipresent. And also for intelligent cases, for example, we always had the first adoption around intelligent scenarios in finance. So payment advice, automated payment advice, automatic grabbing data into that one. This works pretty well, but we have also really nice cases around manufacturing to improve your processes there.
And may I just add to that? I think it kind of segues what I was just jumping up from my seat to say, touches on a bit on what Bert just mentioned at the end. I mean, if we look into S4HANA, there are completely new concepts like DDMRP, and also the whole aspect of 3D printing being tied to the S4 core, and several extended warehouse management coming directly into S4HANA, or being supported through APIs to our external world, right? So I think what I just mentioned finance exactly for the same reason, that was the earliest. But that being said, if you look at inventory management, there has also been much more simplification, which makes it easier from an integration perspective as well. Because when you think about sending APIs, dealing with APIs, it makes it much more easier to integrate to an external world if the internal world is not that complex, right? So So from that perspective, several changes have come into the system that will help you to also do the end-to-end process in a complete way, but not in as complex a way as in the past. And you can really find innovations and flexibility in all these different areas. So as we look through each of the layers and pull up the hood, then we see what are the different changes that have really led to this point of time, right? So it's a very interesting journey.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paru. Dan, I know you and I have had some ongoing conversations over the last few weeks about, hey, listen, us from a Generac perspective, what can we do to get prepared for this journey? What types of things are you most concerned about on the preparation side, Dan?
Well, similar to Helen, we have massive growth in our company right now. We're very proud to announce that we're rolling out a new manufacturing facility in South Carolina and adding jobs in the U.S. But proposing, a major upgrade like as value, that business case to present. I guess the second thing that would keep me up at night is how does this change my team? We've created an ECC-centric support model in-house and rely on some external partners as well. And what are you guys seeing in terms of support models after going to S4?
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this and welcome, Bert, your insights as well. From a change management aspect from ECC world to the S4 world, obviously you're going to need to upskill your talent, right? And so there's some level of knowledge upgrade that has to occur with that. Secondly, it really depends on some of your deployment options that you have, right? So if you're moving into the public cloud is very different than that. When I say public cloud, SAP S4HANA Essentials is very different from S4HANA Extended or even on the on-premise solution, right? So there's some knowledge that needs to be had there, and quite honestly, SAP takes on a portion of that support when you're in the Essentials edition. But like I said, I think there's a lot of uptake on how your support model will look and feel from that standpoint. Bert, thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Daniel, it's of course a question: where is your journey ending? In which direction is it going? Is it more into a public cloud or in an environment? But if you look at S4 as such, so without any deployment differences, I think my entire team of experts who is currently really doing that advisor service, these are all long-lasting consultants. They have done like 10, 15, 20-year experience in the industry. So they also all come from an on-premise background. So this is the good message. I think the knowledge is not without any value. It continues to also be of significant value that people know how the processes runs, how you have the development models, and how this is all going together. What is new? If you look into HANA as a database, of course, there's like a slight different way and some additional skills which you need to really orchestrate a HANA database versus an old database structure. What is definitely new is the entire UX and Fiori. So this is something where you need to train your people to make themselves familiar with Fiori, with that overall setup. There are some new technologies more around Java, but also, for example, tools like SAC, our analytic functionality. But beside that, the basic butter and bread knowledge stays almost the same. The structure of this team stay almost the same. The business process knowledge, which you need to really operate your system and your team, stays almost the same. This is, from my point of view, the good message in all of that change.
Great info. Thank you.
Thanks. From a time check perspective, we're bumping up against the 30-minute mark, if you will, of what we're intending to present. I would like to ask one follow-on question as it relates to preparation activities that a customer can possibly do in the event that the timeline is not immediate, right, to transition to S4. So for instance, they may be putting together a business case in 2021 and possibly even the first half of 2022, but they will go to a board of directors or their executive leadership to say, hey, listen, we're going to ask for a capital appropriation request so that we can implement later in 2022. So obviously there's a period of time that from now until sometime in mid 2022 that a theoretical organization can say, hey, listen, what can I do to get ready? What would your answer be to that, Bert?
It's twofold. It's one on the business side, the other one on the technical side. This is also, by the way, how we have structured an offering of RISE, because this also was born on the experience of what we've seen, how customers are moving into that direction. So it first starts with the business process transformation as a service to really make sure that you create your business case, drive things and processes in the right direction. I think your question also goes a bit to the second part of RISE, the technical setup, technical preparation. So what can every customer do without tapping into any additional demand at this point in time? First, consider back to standard, which means do a custom code remediation, do a custom code review, and check with the tools which you have available in your system today if any of the custom code is not compatible towards the S4 world. The tool will show that to you. Run the readiness check. You can do that anytime. And you can do that 10 times, 100 times. But this readiness check also gives you a very good and clear insight about what is going to happen in the S4 project. Then I would consider the next thing is to really make up your mind and start now with considering what could be like the transition scenario. Do I want to have a transition? Do I want to have a greenfield implementation? What are the reasons for the one and or the other option, and start to make up your mind there, because this will be at a relatively early point in time, a point of decision which you need to take. And then also data cleansing is a question which we also get all the time. Data cleansing should be done anytime. I mean, this is of course a recommendation, and I know that it's sometimes wishful thinking in that overall setup, but what is important, we do see that a lot of time is consumed from customers during the business partner transition from the old world to the new world. And this is, for example, old postal codes, old account data from accounts. So this typical master data cleansing, this is something I would strongly recommend to every customer, because in projects, this is the biggest unexpected time-consuming task typically in projects. We've seen that with 1511, that a lot of customers were running into it. We've professionalized in the meantime significantly. Nevertheless, if you ask me for unexpected workload in projects, it's typically master data cleaning. And this is what you can do anyway, already starting today in your system.
Thank you. We'll now go ahead and open it to the floor for questions. All of our email addresses are actually on the slide that you are seeing. Feel free to reach out at your convenience. Thank you for joining us today. Helen, Dan, thank you for providing the customer point of view and also asking questions that I feel that are very relevant and are being utilized by other customers at this point. Bert, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for joining. And Paru, I'll see you on Slack.